Welcome to the Fermynwoods Contemporary Art Podcast, guest curated and presented by Subterra. In search of solace in this precarious world, we emerge from ocular darkness. Rays of light pierce through the nocturnal, and in these twinkling soundscapes, we are reminded that we are part of something greater than ourselves. As we navigate these curious and luminous spaces, we will explore artist talks, discussions, and original commissioned sound art. Hello everyone, a warm welcome back to another episode of Love and Light. Perhaps it is because we have now been fully enfolded into the gentle, sun-filled embrace of spring that light feels like a particular focus of this episode, specifically in its relevance to profound questions and experiences of the soul. This work, titled Ear for the Other by Adrienne Murray, is a sonic exploration of the importance of being receptive to, sensing, and feeling for the other. The other is felt in all things outside the realms of self, within and around space, in the things which space contains, and in the voice and dreams of others. Adrienne writes that in opening yourself up to the other by simply being present and embodied within your environment, a more intuitive empathy for the inherent vitality and poetry which surrounds us can be experienced. Responding to the fragile relationship between immateriality and physical connection in the age of the digital, Adrienne hopes to provide respite from the numb and disconnected states of being brought on by the experience of being repeatedly exposed to vast amounts of information online. This work also expresses the entangled nature of longing with being, through the ties of presence, sensation, and embodiment, and in the inherent human need to reach outwards towards the other. Adrienne and I first attempted to record a conversation together in person, in line with this longing for physical presence and embodiment. Yet technology seemed to be against us, and the initial recorded conversation was lost to the ether. This meant, ironically, that we had to re-record our fascinating discussion remotely and digitally. But all of these instances feel somehow connected to the complex themes in this work. And selfishly, I didn't mind, as it allowed me to bask for even longer in the sensitive and tender world that Adrienne has presented to us. Adrienne Murray is a Scottish artist whose work involves the balance between solidity in the form of object making and ephemerality through her sound work. Motifs of vessels are recurring within her practice as a symbol for the human body and an exploration of the barriers between internal and external things. Adrienne works instinctually, with a focus on her intentions, creating space for stillness, sensitivity, and embodiment. In the age of the digital, Adrienne examines our experience of the space in between the immaterial and the tactile within everyday life. Adrienne is the recipient of the Royal Scottish Academy New Contemporaries Award and the Visual Arts Scotland Graduate Showcase Award, and was more recently awarded the RSA Stewart Prize for her work exhibited at the Royal Scottish Academy. So, without further ado, here is Ear for the Other by Adrienne Murray, followed by an enlightening conversation about her work.
maybe just to start off this time talking about a lot like of the source of inspiration for the work was from a book that I read, which was Non-Things Upheaval in the Life World by Byung-Chul Han. But yeah, this book, it talked about a lot of things that I felt like I'd been thinking about in my work before I'd even seen it, expressed in writing. Yeah, it was about how the digital kind of destabilizes reality um, because of the immateriality and also the sheer expanse of information online. There is so much information. It's such, just infinite amounts. And to take that in, to process that, there is no, real easy way. And he speaks about how things, objects in our surroundings are what stabilize reality. And there's some other things he talks about as well, like in terms of routines and rituals. That's the word he uses, and how in the past, rituals and things were a big part of people's lives. And now with the digital, there's almost this kind of immaterial and lacking tangibility kind of existence that we are within.
Yeah.
Where instead we kind of sit still
Yeah.
and look at screens and take in so much. Yeah, so this really kind of a lot of this inspired the work. And the title came from the book, Ear for the Other.
Yeah, I remember something we originally discussed last time was what I really love about that title is that it's an offering, it's like a generous offering for this concept of otherness, which I'm sure we'll speak about again, but um there's something very kind of gentle about that. And the work is very gentle as well, while at the same time being like strong or like certain or something like that. But yeah, there's a real kind of like gentle offering, which is interesting when you think about ritual and like votive offerings and the concept of divinity, which I know is something that you are considering as well. Um, yeah, and I was wondering if this idea of ritual that you mentioned plays a part in how you record sound and how you edit sound, or even how you consider the making of the artwork.
Um, I wouldn't say that it majorly does, but I do think that there is like an attempt to sort of grasp at something,
Mm,
and maybe ritual is a bit of a part of that. But it's like this kind of back and forth of, you know, maybe a bit of a sort of balance again between the digital and things, and when recording and the process, it kind of maybe reflects that a little bit.
yeah,
Um, and I think when I think about ritual, and I think maybe more just in daily practice, daily kind of routine. And I kind of like the idea that in the creative process and that it can become a part of something that is just almost meditative, kind of everyday routine,
yeah,
if that makes sense.
yeah, it definitely makes sense. And I think yeah, it's such an important part of like feeling, I don't know, grounded is having a routine, isn't it? I think it can be
Yeah.
difficult as a creative person to have routine, I think. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but
Yeah.
I think you need to implement it, don't you, as a kind of framework in order to kind of not get lost in the soup of making and thinking all the time. And yeah, totally. It made me think of something that I maybe didn't mention last time we spoke, that it made me think about was this idea of the digital. There's a book by Eric Davis, I think, called Technosis, which actually discusses the kind of deeply supernatural quality of the digital and the internet, because it almost has this kind of divine quality in a sense, because it's this entity that has knowledge of everything.
Yeah.
It's almost like a kind of collective unconscious of, or maybe conscious of, every person ever.
Yeah.
And every bit of information that we have all been able to kind of, gather as a race. So yeah, in a sense, the work made me think, and hearing you speak about, the kind of surreality of the digital. And yeah, the reason I thought of this book by Davis was just that it shows how maybe we think we live in this kind of secular existence, but actually there are so many quasi kind of religious and mystical aspects of our lives. And in your work, you're kind of finding alternative ways of accessing that, I think.
I at times have thought about how, I remember thinking about this like a year ago, is how the internet is this compression of time and space and information, and it can almost be quite overwhelming and chaotic. And I think within my work, I'm trying to seek embodiment.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, try to reflect that relationship that I think we all maybe feel a sense of, this sort of balance between the digital and our physical spaces.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe that's a good time to kind of start to begin to tease at the idea of the other and what that represents, or how that manifests in your work, and how you think about it when you're making these kind of symphonies.
For me, the other is everything outside of the self. And it's like the experience of presence and absorbing what's around you, in other life forms, in environment, in nature, in other people, and looking outwards instead of, I think we spoke about this, I think the digital really encourages people to look inwards a lot in a way that's kind of uncomfortable and not healthy.
Yeah, not in a productive way, right?
Not in a good way.
Yeah.
It's like kind of getting a tape stuck on a loop.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that it's really important to look outwards and to sense, and almost a sort of instinctual like being, to absorb your environment and to care for the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think last time we spoke, I referred to it as a kind of like constant self-surveillance.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely exhausting.
It is.
And I think there's an expectation that everyone, you know, will have a sort of online persona versus their kind of like physical person to person interaction. Sometimes it feels so different, and it can often feel online like a performance, you know, and you're kind of trying to like show the best side of yourself all the time, and, you know, not have a very kind of like one-dimensional view of who you actually are.
Yeah. I've thought at times, and I don't know if you could relate to this, that sometimes it feels like if you don't have like an online presence, or if you don't keep up with your online presence, it's almost like you don't exist.
Yeah.
And it's strange.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think there's so much freedom in just kind of embracing that void of like, whether, you know, just like be in the void and like, I don't exist, I don't participate. I kind of love that. I wish I could do that.
I wish I could too.
And also there's an expectation, I guess, as an artist that you will be on Instagram, and you will be, because our work is so visual, that you will have a visual presence. I hope that someday I can just like live in a cottage and only make the work that I feel the need to make, and not have to present it like that.
To just be in the physical realm.
Exactly. Like, that's all I need.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, although, you know, we're speaking about this kind of looking outwards, I think what the work is able to do at the same time is create a really fascinating like Adrienne self-portrait, you know. Because, you know, the sounds that you choose to record, and, you know, the people who you interacted with in the recordings, with the humming, and the, you know, the birds, and, you know, I think last time we spoke about also the sort of like everyday sounds, like the car in the distance and that kind of thing. It's a representation of your physicality, I guess, isn't it, in the world? Like your eardrums hearing those things, and then we in turn get to experience that, and then we can kind of be grounded in that as well. And I think the listening experience is deeply meditative because of that. Like, I found myself, I told you this, but I was like doing the dishes and pottering around the flat, and I felt like it was kind of narrating my existence, and I guess it was in a deeply physical sense, but also it was kind of narrating my inner world, which was just lovely. You know, it was just such a pleasant kind of experience. But there was like a kind of also unsettling tone to it at times. But I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I mean, I know you know I'm interested in this, but there's a kind of straddling between beauty and horror, you know, where the work kind of exists somewhere between the two. Because I remember listening to someone speak about the line between the two, which is, you know, I'm sitting here speaking to you now and I'm smiling and everything is great, but if I started to smile really widely and then I kept smiling and then just didn't stop smiling and my grin got wider and wider, it would be absolutely horrifying.
Yeah.
But initially it's like beauty between two people speaking, you know, in a kind of friendly way. So I think that's that line of the uncanny that can exist in the very nature of being that you're able to access in the making of this work, you know.
Yeah. That's interesting. It kind of made me think of some things. Like, I think there is something inherently a bit like horrifying just about being a human, you know?
Yeah.
I think that you can't untie it. I think they're entangled. And I think also like there is something like in the work that's about daydream. And I think a lot about things that are internal and things that are external, and this sort of like back and forth. And, you know, in that there's something kind of a bit uncanny because, you know, something within, you know, something, it's just, yeah, seeming opposites, but somehow something inside being revealed, or
yeah, maybe something inside that we all know we have but don't quite know how to express, you know, something that's deeply ontological, like it's just about being, you know.
Yeah, just about being. And I think sometimes that's something that people tap into when they daydream, or when they just sit and kind of like dissolve.
Yeah, even like like feelings of dissociation are deeply.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like I'm not a fan of. Have you ever seen that film Melancholia with Kirsten Dunst?
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. I'm not a fan of that director either.
What's his name? I can't think of it.
Lars von Trier.
That's him. Yeah, Lars von Trier.
Yeah.
The reason that film was interesting to me compared to his others was that it was the character who was the most kind of depressed and struggling with being throughout most of the film that was then most able to cope with this kind of hugely dystopian moment where this other planet crashes into Earth.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when I'm in those moments of like distance from, when I'm just like purely daydreaming and experiencing that sense of otherness that comes with being, everything around me feels like an illusion, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but actually there is something in that experience that the work also kind of speaks to.
Yeah. I think that like again reflects this kind of, you know, as much as I want the work to be about embodiment, again it's this attempt, you know, it's like it's trying, you know, it's like this push and pull, you know, aspiration that maybe says more about reflecting a state of being that we exist within in this day and age than actually achieving the true kind of embodiment, you know, if that
it is very like longing or something. Right.
I think about longing a lot in my work. I think there's something just tied to being.
Yeah, exactly. It's like part of being. There's no end goal. There's no thing that would end the longing, right? It's kind of a part of being that is just experiential and needs to be there. Yeah. And I know that, you know, we spoke about the kind of the rattle at the end of the sound piece. And when I first listened to it, I thought, this sounds like some kind of being that is trying to exist physically. Like it is like trying to find a form, trying to like break out of something, or to almost trying, at moments it sounds like it's got a rhythm and then it kind of loses it, you know, and you're like, oh, I just want to help it. I found myself like, wanting to give it expression, or to allow it to be, or so maybe you could speak a bit about that.
That sound is the sound of, I think it was sunflower seeds contained within a glass container, being shaken, and my cat is meowing at the door.
Oh, I can't hear it.
And it's maybe longing. I should go let him in.
Yeah, no problem.
He's longing
to be let in.
I've always been kind of drawn to containers,
Mm.
vessels, in my visual work and also in my sound work. And I think of containers as a kind of metaphor for the body.
Mm.
Um, and I like this idea of sunflower seeds, and there's something light and kind of about growth. And yeah, so that sound came from me shaking this glass container filled with sunflower seeds.
Right. So it was like kind of, I feel like I picked up on that in my
Yeah,
interpretation a little bit.
you did.
Yeah. And it also, hearing you describe that makes me think of the illustration that you did to accompany the work,
Hmm.
which to me, I know I told you this before, but it reminded me, or it really made me think of almost like this organ that was growing roots or trying to kind of like extend beyond the self into something else.
Yeah,
And again, that sense of longing for being or longing as being.
yeah. I think that's kind of what those drawings are about. They originated from a little poem I wrote, just a little sentence that was the branch that reaches out and the root that stems from within. And I think of those drawings as, I kind of wrote this down somewhere, as a way of taking environmental sites or transfiguring environmental sites to reflect something of the soul.
Mm,
Um, or maybe, you know, I guess the soul is one way of putting it, but just the inside, the insides of a person, the guts and
yeah.
all that's in there. Um, and there is something about those drawings that's meant to reflect this kind of inherent like push and pull and tension of being,
Yeah.
this kind of precarity,
Yeah.
um, but also have a kind of strength.
Yeah, because when you think about soul um or the very essence of being, or consciousness, it's very hard to imagine what that might look like as a physical form, because I don't necessarily see my soul as being how I look or my body or anything like that.
Yeah,
Thinking about the idea of the vessel as, the body.
yeah,
And I think, it's a very, very, very interesting exercise to try and illustrate what that might look like on paper, and
hmm,
to give it a physical form, like a pebble or tree branches or something that really pulls it down to earth,
yeah,
rather than lets it kind of fly away,
yeah,
literally grounds it.
yeah,
It's something I want to do now. I want to draw what mine might look like.
yeah, you should. Yeah, it was very much about that, those drawings. And I think that they're also kind of balancing
Yeah.
between two things.
Actually, I didn't say this last time we spoke, but it made me think so much of I think it's Sailing to Byzantium by Yeats. I don't know if you've ever heard that poem before. I'm just gonna read the line. Okay, so I think Yeats wrote this when he was getting older, and he was really struggling with the idea of aging and of his body decaying.
Hmm.
And he wrote, "An aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless Soul clap its hands and sing, and louder sing, for every tatter in its mortal dress. And that kind of push and pull between soul and physical, like, I love the idea of bodies just being these kind of coats hanging on a stick. And, you know, it just, yeah, there's something in that really reminds me of this conversation.
I think there's this inherent reaching out, you know, and it's in the sound work as well, to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually thinking, because I read this out, you know, the last time we spoke, but I may be reading this out again.
Yeah, please.
Because I think it kind of ties into the drawings as well, or you know, the accompanying image and the sound work. This is some writing from the book that I mentioned, Non-Things Upheaval in the Life World, and it's from a chapter called The Magic of Things. Inconspicuous things, such as a half-filled pitcher with a beetle swimming on the surface, a crippled apple tree, a moss-covered stone, or a harrow left in the fields over which the eye usually glides with a natural indifference, all of a sudden assume a character so exalted and moving that they cause a silent but suddenly rising flood of divine sensation. Epiphanic experiences of intensity cause a kind of feverish thinking in a medium more immediate, more liquid, more glowing than words.
That's so nice.
I think that's almost about the magic of things and the magic of, you know, the poetry of objects and things.
Yeah. Yeah, and this kind of like world philosophy of like being enchanted by what's around you. And I love that word that he uses, indifference, because we do just kind of go about, so like, you know, in our kind of ego state, thinking about us and what we have to do that day and all, you know, everything we're worried about. But actually, like, it's just a deeply mindful way of existing, and finding being another being. And
just seeing the beauty and vitality in all that's around you in the everyday. And it can be quite, just those moments, I find, like, it's that balance between inside and outside again.
And it can almost put you in a kind of like trance, or, you know, I'm kind of interested in the idea of the kind of Kundalini experience. You know, that shiver you get down your spine when you just kind of sense something so much greater than yourself, or I don't know,
like the sublime.
Totally.
That was something I was also like thinking a little bit about, in acknowledging and seeing and feeling the other. And I think that, like, when you're open to that, that's the moments where you feel a sense of that, the sublime, or, you know, just that you feel how small you are, and it's actually quite a good feeling. You know?
Totally. It's something I do try and think about when things feel overwhelming. You know? And I know you mentioned before as well that you kind of want the work to be for people, or for people to experience and to feel a sense of calm or connection, maybe.
Completely. I want to be able, like, I wanted the work to have a warmth and sincerity and humanity. You know, even though it's a bit abstract, it's a bit, you know, floaty, and I think that those moments where people, you know, where somebody might say something like, oh, I really connected to this, or this inspired me, or this made me feel relaxed, or this made me I really enjoyed listening to this. I love that.
Yeah, totally.
It's connection.
Yeah.
It's giving somebody something, that's
Yeah.
I want to be able to.
Yeah, for the other. Yeah.
For the other.
And it's also like ear for the other makes me think of kind of like, that expression like lending someone an ear. Just like presence of like, because the work listens as well as makes sound, it's both.
Yeah.
And that is deeply comforting as a concept. And we didn't actually speak about this before, but like, and I think it's quite evident how this work fits with the kind of general theme of love and light, very empathetic kind of way. It's often I think when we think about climate action or climate justice, we're thinking so deeply into the future and the safety of the future and stuff like that, because that's how we can feel kind of safety in the present. But also I think what this work is able to do is make us feel deeply in the present, which in turn kind of generates a feeling of love and empathy for the planet, which kind of maybe inspires more action,
Yeah.
rather than future thinking only.
Yeah. That's good to hear. And it's funny because I've been thinking a lot recently about how to respond to, kind of apathy in this kind of day and age. And the digital, I think, kind of encourages sometimes apathy because there's such vastness, it just is overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the response to that, how to respond to that, is presence.
Yeah.
Is being, because I think all the things that are needed to encourage empathy for our environment, the necessities to a way forward are found in instinct, care, and community. And all of these things are rooted in presence, in being, sensing, and caring. When I was kind of imagining this work, and in my work previously, I've thought about the mesh when I was reading The Ecological Thought by Timothy Morton. And the mesh, the concept of the mesh is the kind of interconnectivity of all things. And I wrote about this sort of idea of the veil as being this thing that kind of a barrier, a film almost, that stops you from perceiving how interconnected things are and how you are just part of this. And I think we spoke about this, that potentially the veil is, self and ego. And it can be a little bit of a kind of blockage.
Like literally this kind of fabric over your self.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe I'll read out the thing that I wrote down. And this is kind of what the piece is about, a type of meditation on form, on space, on movement, on the barest of things stretched across the veil of perception.
You can find more from Adrienne on her SoundCloud, Percussion Unbound, and her Instagram, at Adrienne Murray Art. Adrienne has also created a playlist of music she was listening to when creating this piece. All of this and accompanying images will be in the episode description and on our website, as always. Adrienne would also like to credit Maria Olenich and Sarah Hornby for contributing their voices to this sound piece. You can also find all of the references discussed in the conversation in the audio transcript. Listeners on Spotify are able to experience an accompanying video to this episode by artist Sapphire Goss. And for listeners on other platforms, you can find Sapphire's work on our website. All of this will also be included in the episode description. Sapphire Goss is an artist who works with moving image, photography, and other lens-based methods. Using obsolete technologies, she creates chimerical imagery using unexpected materials, looping, and processing to make an analog uncanny. Grainy, shimmering, otherworldly, bursts of light and emotion that are moving and mysterious. Thank you for listening to the Fermynwoods Contemporary Art Podcast. If you enjoy our podcast, please make sure to positively rate, review, and subscribe. It helps other people find the podcast, and it makes us feel good about ourselves. This episode has been curated by Subterra and presented by me, Marie Chantal Hamrock, and edited by Astrid Björklund. Love and Light is Fermynwoods Contemporary Art's new thematic program. Visit fermynwoods.org for more information on this program and to sign up to our monthly email newsletter. Follow us at Fermynwoods on Instagram and Facebook. And make sure to check out myself and Astrid as Subterra at Subterrestrials on Instagram. Thank you for listening. With love and light, Marie and Astrid.